Welcome to This Explainer, where we're about to embark on an absolutely incredible journey. We're going to zoom all the way down, way past what our naked eyes can naturally perceive, right down to the microscopic scale. Our goal today? To uncover this massive hidden universe that exists right under our noses. It's on our hands, it's in our food, it's literally all around us. So let's just dive right into this. Now, just imagine for a second that you had a magical lens that suddenly made every invisible living thing around you completely visible. What do you think you'd actually see? Well, it turns out this hidden world completely challenges our basic ideas of size, of complexity, and honestly, even what we consider to be living. It is a bustling, highly interactive universe that just goes completely unnoticed by us every single day. All right, let's start with Section 1, Seeing the Invisible World. For basically all of human history, the rule was simple. If we couldn't see it, it didn't exist. But then early humans realized that a curved piece of glass, shaped kind of like a lentil seed, could magnify tiny things. And that sparked a total explosion of discovery. By the 1660s, this brilliant observer named Robert Hooke published a book called Microphrygia. He was drawing these incredibly detailed sketches of tiny objects magnified like 200 to 300 times. And around that exact same time, a Dutch scientist named Antony van Leeuwenhoek was taking things a step further, drastically improving these lenses. His setups were so good that he became the very first person to clearly see and describe tiny living things like bacteria, which eventually earned him the title of the father of microbiology. It's really something else to look back at these early discoveries. Hooke actually drew what he saw in his journal, and it's fascinating. One day, he placed a paper-thin slice of cork under his microscope, and when he looked through the lens, he was utterly amazed to find that it wasn't solid at all. It was made up of all these small, empty spaces, perfectly organized, almost like a honeycomb. He decided to call each of these little compartmentalized spaces a cell. And boom, just like that, the word cell was used in science for the very first time to describe the basic unit of life. Moving right along to Section 2, Building Blocks of Life. So what Robert Hooke stumbled upon wasn't just some quirky little feature of a piece of cork. It was a fundamental truth of biology. Absolutely all living beings are made up of these basic structural units called cells. And to really understand them, there's a super classic procedure using just an ordinary onion. You basically take a wonderfully thin, totally transparent peel from the inner surface of an onion bulb. But here's the thing, cells are mostly clear, so you place it in a red stain called safranin. This gives those hidden structures a pinkish color so they really pop out at you. Then you place it on a glass slide with a drop of glycerin. That glycerin is a brilliant little trick, actually. It keeps the cells from drying out and really improves the clarity. Pop a cover slip on and take a look through a microscope. Now, compare that rigid onion structure to what you'd see if you gently scraped the inside of your own cheek. Human cheek cells are totally different. Instead of being rigid, they're thin, flat, and kind of polygon-shaped. They fit together seamlessly to form this really soft protective lining right there on the inside of your mouth. But here is the big takeaway. Even though cheek cells and onion cells look wildly different, they actually share a fundamental anatomy. Virtually all cells have three basic parts. First up, you've got the cell membrane. That's the porous outer layer that acts like a bouncer, controlling what enters and exits. Second is the nucleus, which is basically the round control center right in the middle. And third is the cytoplasm. This is the jelly-like substance filling the space between them. That is where carbohydrates, proteins, and pretty much the whole shebang of life's critical processes actually happen. Of course, there are some absolutely crucial differences too, and this explains exactly why plants and animals behave so differently. Plant cells, like our onion, have this extra outer layer called a cell wall. This is what gives the plant rigidity and strength. It's the reason a massive tree can stand tall without having a skeleton. Plants also feature these large, empty-looking spaces called vacuoles for storage, plus chloroplasts, which make them green and let them capture sunlight. Animal cells, though, no cell walls at all, which gives us way more flexibility. And our vacuoles are either super small or just entirely absent. Okay, jumping into Section 3, How Bodies Are Organized. So how in the world does a single microscopic cell turn into a complex human being or a towering oak tree? Well, think of it exactly like building a house. A single cell is your basic brick. When you group a bunch of similar cells together to do a specific job, you get a tissue. That's your solid brick wall. Combine different tissues together and you build an organ, like a stomach or a leaf. That's a room. Put several organs together to perform a major bodily function, and you've got an organ system, like your digestive system. That's the plumbing and the electrical in the house. And finally, you put all those systems together, and you have the complete organism. Now, we usually think of cells as completely invisible, right? But get this. The yolk of an ostrich egg is actually a single cell. Measuring anywhere from 130 to 170 millimeters across, it is the largest known cell in the entire living world. No way, right? It really just shows how incredibly adaptable the architecture of life truly is. And speaking of that adaptable architecture, a cell's shape is never an accident. Its shape directly dictates its macroscopic function. For example, the muscle cells in your stomach are thin, flexible, and spindle-shaped. That specific shape allows them to physically contract and literally churn the food you eat. Meanwhile, your nerve cells are incredibly long with these sweeping branches. That elongated shape is perfectly designed to flash rapid electrical messages across the vast distances of your entire body. Form perfectly follows function. Which brings us to Section 4, Meet the Microbes. Let's zoom all the way back down past the human level for a second. If you were to take just a single drop of pond water, or maybe a tiny pinch of moist soil, and put it under a microscope, you would see an absolute bustling metropolis. You'd find protozoa like the shape-shifting amoeba, you'd see microscopic fungi like the mold that grows on old bread, you'd spot tiny algae, spherical and packed with green chlorophyll, and you would see a vast, vast array of bacteria shaped like spheres, commas, spirals, rods, you name it. That single drop of water holds an entire diverse ecosystem. And that leads us perfectly into Section 5, Tiny Helpers, Big Impacts. So why does all this invisible stuff actually matter to us? Well, think about making bread. When you add a tiny pinch of yeast to dough, it gets fluffy and doubles in size. Why? Because yeast is a single-celled fungus. When it's warm, it actually respires, it breathes. It breaks down sugars for energy, and as it does that, it releases carbon dioxide gas. Those gas bubbles get trapped in the dough, making your bread rise and become deliciously soft. A completely invisible organism is quite literally the master chef behind your favorite baked goods. But hey, they do a whole lot more than just bake bread. Microbes are absolute environmental heroes. Certain fungi and bacteria are nature's ultimate recyclers. They decompose dead plant and animal waste and turn it into nutrient-rich manure. Microalgae in our oceans and ponds, they produce more than 50% of the Earth's entire oxygen supply. Let that sink in. And bacteria like rhizobium actually live right inside the roots of plants, trapping nitrogen from the air and naturally fertilizing the soil. They are the invisible engines keeping our planet running. What I find truly mind-blowing about all of this is that humanity has sensed the presence of this hidden world for a very long time. Ancient Indian texts, particularly the Vedas, actually reference the word krimi. This term encompassed all sorts of tiny entities, and it specifically noted that some were drishya, meaning visible, while others were adrishya, entirely invisible to the naked eye. Thousands of years before the microscope was even a concept, ancient scholars were already actively pondering the massive impacts these invisible forces had on our health and our world. Fast forward to the modern era, and we aren't just observing these microbes anymore. We are actively partnering with them. In 1971, this incredible scientist named Ananda Mohan Chakrabarty achieved a massive breakthrough. He developed a specialized bioengineered bacterium that could literally eat and break down crude oil. I mean, think about the devastating environmental disasters caused by massive oil spills in our oceans. Chakrabarty proved that our absolute greatest ally in cleaning up those colossal messes might just be a microscopic organism, a real game changer. So, from the honeycomb cells of a piece of cork, to the yeast bubbling in our bread, all the way to oil-eating bacteria, the invisible living world is endlessly complex and overwhelmingly powerful. And honestly, we've only just scratched the surface of what these tiny helpers can do. So I want to leave you with this thought today. As we face huge new global challenges in agriculture and medicine and with climate change, what other massive human and environmental problems do you think could be solved by the invisible helpers all around us? Keep wondering, keep looking closely, and thanks so much for joining me on this explainer.